2019 has been a year that had a lot of ups and downs, and I think, just like every other year prior, I have always said this, that there are more good movies than there are bad movies. And in today's list, yeah, that's pretty much the sentiment. There are 44 films on this list, and I had to parse through a lot of films. And there are some films that are not on here, and some people will be like, well, why isn't that film on there? Well, that's because I just didn't want to have it on there. Simple as that. Every year I watch around 120 movies, and this year was no exception, because I watched a grand total of 115 movies from the year of 2019. And that is a long and arduous journey through back doors and deals to try to watch these movies. And while not every single one of these movies of the 115 were mentioned, 20 of them at least were mentioned in the worst video. And so, let's get right into the list. The first of two Willem Dafoe films on this list, I am truly baffled as to how TOGO wasn't released to the public. Unlike a lot of other films on Disney+, TOGO wasn't that forgettable. Sure, some of the CG environments aren't that believable, the story is truly awesome though, and the fact that no one found out this particular story till the mid-2010s is just ridiculous. For all this time, Balto was paraded around as the dog who saved Alaska, but TOGO did most of the legwork, literally. And unlike other dog-related films, the death of the dog in this film felt a little bit different, as it wasn't just being played to tears. It's a moment of silence and memorialization for a dog that became a hidden hero. Seriously, go watch this movie, it's on Disney Plus right now. Arctic is a very atmospheric film, devoid of all life, as Mads Mikkelsen fights to survive in the chilling air of the Arctic. It truly made me feel the desperation of the character, trying to go from point A to point B, trying to save not only his life, but the life of a person that could have saved his own life. It isn't a perfect film by any means, but it's a damn good one. This is the textbook chapter on crowd pleasing, a fun family comedy all set within the world of the WWE. Florence Pugh gives one of the first of many performances this year that I love from her specifically. She is determined to fight for her spot in the ring and make her family proud. This is a very cute, charming, and at times emotional story. I understand why some people will protest why 1917 is put so low on this list, but let me explain. Aside from the gimmick, the film is about as impactful as Dunkirk, meaning that there isn't a lot of development for the characters to explore and are only there to showcase quote-unquote an event. The cinematography is fine in the film, and at times it is very intense, but you take out the gimmick and all you have left is just another basic war film with very minimal character development. I feel like if Sam Mendes and Roger Deakins' names weren't attached to the film, it might not have garnered such attention as it did, but it is still entertaining regardless of my own criticisms. How this film isn't getting talked about is beyond me. While it certainly isn't comparable to other films on this list, it is still largely an effective piece on how flawed our criminal justice system is when it comes to death row inmates. Some of the stories explored here are extremely dour and got me to connect emotionally multiple times. There are some great performances here from Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan as they help to show the real-life story of the man who helped so many wrongfully convicted death row inmates. And speaking of corruption, Dark Waters is truly a terrifying piece of procedural filmmaking, highlighting the real-life cases involved in the DuPont scandal involving forever compounds in the water we drink. While at times it is a bit dry and a little slow, the film highlights how terrifying and corrupt the system is when companies can just buy off regulations and get away with horrendous things. While not the most honest of marketing campaigns, this is one of the few films to really dig deep into a character's psyche, even if that character's psyche we are exploring isn't necessarily the one that we were promised. How they operate and what motivates the lead protagonist, this film struck a chord with me so hard that I found it hard to express my own thoughts coming home from the theater. And without a doubt, Tom Hanks gives a very great performance portraying Mr. Rogers. Not a great film by any means, but I still recommend it. Another crowd pleaser film, Ford v Ferrari, is an energetic, fast-paced film with some great chemistry between Matt Damon and Christian Bale as collaborators on the project to prove that American ingenuity can beat Italian speed cars. The cinematography, sound design, and acting here is all top notch with an ending that I kinda didn't really see coming and still left me emotional. It's still an entertaining film to say the least. Blinded by the Light is a highly enjoyable film about the power that our voices have in this world, how we change others, and more importantly, how we change ourselves by standing up for what we believe in and what we love. This is just a really fun, energetic, and delightful film for me. Scorsese is without a doubt one of the most influential filmmakers ever, and the fact that he still doesn't have an Oscar is kinda sad. The Irishman feels like a story he would make. I feel like Martin here was contemplating on the genre that made him famous, how far he has come and where he stands now looking back on his career in society. And while the de-aging isn't perfect, the technology used is pretty revolutionary, utilizing three cameras at once to gather data on the actors' faces to help in the process. Is it slow? Yeah, but it's still good nonetheless, despite the pacing issues. KLAUS is one of the unsung heroes this year in animation. It was a delectable Christmas treat with awesome animation. Not to mention it was created by a former Disney animator, which made the Oscars more tense as it was literally a former member going up against the mob of animation. The art style here is very memorable with the 3D light and texture on top of traditional hand-drawn animation. The story behind KLAUS' story is unique and oddly dark. Plus, the voice talents of J.K. Simmons immediately springs from this version of Santa. However, the reason why it isn't really higher on this list is due to the film's narrative crutch of the liar's reveal. But the rest of the story is pretty good with some fun reinventions of the classic stories of Santa Claus. One of the oddest documentaries I have ever talked about, the first-person POV walking tour documentary is funny, entertaining, and insightful about one man's journey into a different country. I almost want to say it's its own genre of film, as it plays around with the audio to sound like one of those guided walking tours that you get in headphones at a museum. If you could find a way to watch it, check this one out. DreamWorks is one of my favorite animation studios of all time. Not only is the Kung Fu Panda trilogy great, but I'd argue now that the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy is just as great, and the finale, while not the best of the series, is still a gorgeously animated finale with some decent character moments. For me, it isn't the best ending ever of a series, but it is a decent end to one of the best animated trilogies of all time. After directing The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, Mike Flanagan finally got to work with his idol on one of the hardest films to make in King's Library. I admire the effort put into not only adapting the book, but also to bridge the gap between Kubrick's film and King's two books. And the result here is commendable. I felt the story here was largely effective, as it is a story of learning from the past of your own parents and learning to become better than them. I honestly liked the dichotomy that was derived between The Shining and Dr. Sleep in terms of the protagonists. The Shining powers here are also really cool to see, and Rose the Hat is a very imposing villain whose introduction is about as scary as the first time we see Pennywise in It. Great work all around here. Ari Aster returns to horror after Hereditary with Midsommar, a film that has made me scared to travel abroad for the rest of my whole life. The cinematography and production design here are top-notch. The VFX for the gang getting high is really trippy here, and once again Florence Pugh gives a powerful performance, and she is becoming one of my favorite actresses. The film is shocking and violent in all the right ways, even though it echoes a bit of Hereditary and also The Wicker Man. I feel like I'm going to say this a lot in this video, but the Academy seems to sleep on a lot of films. Eddie Murphy here in Dolomite Is My Name is stellar as the legendary Rudy Ray Moore. Hilarious and earnest about his intentions, the film itself has one of the best who's who of actors I've ever seen in a film. It's almost like The Disaster Artist in a way, but it is its own thing. Check it out on Netflix if you can. Olivia Wilde's directorial debut with Booksmart is one that is full of fun and heart. This film already has a following, and why shouldn't it? It has an enjoyable chemistry between the leads, a film that expresses the anxiety of growing up and growing out of your comfort zones. It's a really fun comedy, even if it is a little bit formulaic at times. One of the best documentaries this year, I Am Human, is kind of out for sale. I'll link a website description in the description below. But trust me when I say, this is one of the most fascinating and optimistic documentaries about the advancements in medical technology with stories that were really emotional. If you can find a way to watch this film, or if you click the link in the description below to watch it, you will not be disappointed. The only Disney animated film to get on my list this year, Toy Story 4, regardless of how pointless the film may seem, has a lot of love being put into it. The villain this time around isn't really the villain. One problem the villains have had in the past is how sudden the turn is from being a character that was kind of enjoyable to being a villain. But here, the villain over time gives information as to why she wants what she wants. It also has a great voice cast, once again with absolute beautiful animation that really shows how far Pixar has come since the original Toy Story back in the 1990s that had defined them as an animation studio. One caveat though is that I didn't really fully enjoy the treatment of Buzz Lightyear here. He's just kinda dumb in this film. Maybe it's the effects of the factory reset from Toy Story 3, but hey, that's just a theory. A film? We haven't seen a lot of wushu genre films lately, but here with Shadow, it's a really good film. Shadow has a lot of style and grace added to its incredible fight sequences, showcasing a wonderful black and white environment that is just stunning to look at. An entertaining film from start to finish, and I highly recommend to anyone who's looking for a new action film. And speaking of action films, John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is one of the most chaotic, fast-paced action films since Baby Driver or even the last John Wick film. It is undeniable the efforts and passion that goes into every set piece that is just awe-inspiring. It's just a shame that stunt workers don't get enough recognition in Hollywood. There just needs to be an award for stunt choreography and performance at the Oscars, especially after this film. Now granted, I do have one caveat with John Wick Chapter 3, and that is I felt that the film itself, in terms of the action sequences, go on a little bit too long with a lot of repetition, but still, regardless, there's a lot of effort that's put into it, and I could not resist putting it on this list. From the same director as The Pain of Others from the Eastern Oregon Film Festival 2018, Penny Lane comes back with a film about religious freedom and how biased the system of religious acceptance is in a society where religious freedom is part of its First Amendment. It isn't for everyone, but I believe that it is an important documentary for the era. The messages within Hail Satan can be applied to any other religion that is the minority in American representation. The fact that this franchise keeps getting shafted during award season is kinda sad because I honestly think that is almost as good as the original. Talking about the difference between how people play with toys and how they express themselves in terms of gender expression, it's all there, it's really good. Also, Emmett is one of the best male leads in a long while, showcasing that you don't have to always be gruff and tough all the time to be a lovable character. The dedication the team behind this documentary is insane. Seriously, anyone who dedicated so much time to create a 4.5-hour documentary chronicling the history of the 1980s horror scene is a true love letter to the genre that inspired generations of filmmakers and film lovers. And again, the Weary Pine score is amazing. Just a gorgeous looking French film. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a film that does LGBT romance right and shows characters that grow close to each other. The cinematography here is beautiful and the story is emotionally resonant. One of two comic book films to make the list this year, Shazam felt like a breath of fresh air for DC Comics. It was fun, energetic, and largely character-centric. A film that espouses the importance of family, especially those who are foster families. This film also works as a fun little Christmas film. This has become my favorite non-Batman related DC film in quite some time, and all of this was made by a YouTuber named Pony Smasher. Wait, really? David Sandberg's YouTube name is Pony Smasher? Well, now I'm questioning everything. I see a lot of people complaining that they couldn't follow the timeline of Little Women, but honestly, I think Greta Gerwig did a great job distinguishing between the two timelines and how they bleed into each other. The cast here is really on point, and the direction by Gerwig adds a sense of space being utilized. The staging of scenes helps with this as well, a thoughtful, energetic, and at times emotional tale that may have been told a ton of times before, but Gerwig adds her own voice to the pool and it stands out heavily. I'm gonna get this out of my system right now. I don't think this is as good as Get Out, but that doesn't change how I feel about the film on its own. What I especially appreciate about Us is the film's story and allegory between the haves and the have-nots. The film has so many different interpretations that people can basically come to their own conclusion, while it all works as a fun thriller, slasher, comedy film. And talk about missing a nomination with Lupita Nyong'o turning in a solid double performance here. But hey, what else is new with the Oscars disregarding horror films and people of color? The Farewell ended up being a well-rounded film filled with a lot of built-up emotion, showcasing a talented cast of characters, a heartfelt and at times funny story, all about the pros and cons of holding back emotion in the guise of protecting our loved ones from the news of their impending death. I know it sounds odd, but give this film a chance. I promise you'll enjoy it. This film has a lot of gorgeous shots in it with some killer performances. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are putting this on their list, and that's a damn shame, because this film has a lot of powerful performances. A film that is essentially about how one action can lead into a downward spiral for some and comfort for others. Waves truly made waves for me, for a lack of a better term. This film is special to me. Not only was this the first film I saw where I genuinely enjoyed Shia LaBeouf, but it is a film with so much heart and soul into it. Let's also give a hand to Zach Gottskind, who gave a genuinely fun performance, proving that anyone can act. I'd almost say that this is a modern day telling of Huck Finn, only a little bit more optimistic. One of the most enjoyable films this year, what Rian Johnson does here is almost comparable to Ready or Not as a commentary on family wealth. What I think is especially important here about this film is that at the same time that Agatha Christie's books are being readapted into films, what Johnson does here is take the familiar formula and turn it into its own franchise with a distinct Johnson-y feel, filled with one of the most solid ensembles of the year, with tons of fun performances, and while it has a fairly predictable storyline as to who was the mastermind, the journey of getting there was more than worth it. What a colorful, wonderful film. Antonio Banderas gives one of the best performances in a long time, portraying a director who has fallen out of the craft of filmmaking in a depressed state. I found the film quite charming, and at times hilarious. Not much else to say here with Pain and Glory.
Avengers! Assemble.
What can I even say? Let's set aside the debate of whether or not comic book films on their own are cinema or not. The fact that one company has been able to keep a growing audience for 10 whole years, seeing various storylines and characters, is no small feat, let alone getting the entire world to unite to see a film so much that it became the highest grossing film of all time. Lets everyone know how much this film means to them. It felt like a conclusion to end all conclusions. The film's third act is the epitome of epic. Just the Alan Silvestri Portals track alone was enough to send shivers down my spine the first time I saw it as a fan. For fans, it is an emotionally resonant and satisfying conclusion. I don't personally believe that Marvel will ever get this much attention again. As it goes into Phase 4, I am still going to see how this company evolves over time. Are you ready for one of the most shocking films of the year? Okay, I'll say it up front, this is not a film for everyone. At film screenings in Australia, for example, they had on-hand therapists to help people process what they saw. I honestly don't want to talk about this film much for those who haven't seen it. Go in blind, and I dare you not to turn it off after the first act. For the same reason I love this film is the same reason why it isn't going any higher on the list. The film's violence, while effective and weighted, just has too much shock for me. It's a hard pill to swallow towards the end of the first act, and it asks hard for you to continue watching, because what causes the main character to go on a revenge spree is more shocking and disturbing than I Spit on Your Grave. In fact, it utilizes a lot of the same moves during quote-unquote that scene. But if you buy into the film's pleas, the film itself has one of the most satisfying endings I have ever seen this year. It's hard to deny how much of an effect Quentin Tarantino has had on our culture as cinema goers and filmmakers, and it's nice to see how much he is reserved here as a director. He takes his time with this one, and while the pacing isn't perfect in the middle of the film, the third act more than makes up for it. A film with so much to say, but not speaking much at all. Righting the wrong that happened all those years ago on Cielo Drive. And while I can't defend the feet stuff, I mean, oh my god, why is there so many shots of women's feet in this film? The film has so much more going on here. It's not Tarantino's best film, I would say, and it is going to be a sad day when he releases his final film and officially hangs his hat for good. What can I even say about this film that hasn't been said already? The film is a really great drama about the effects of a divorce, and while not everyone's experiences are like the couple in this film, it still has enough maturity to portray the issue as a morally gray issue. Both have their issues, and it shows how bad a divorce like this can have on a relationship. Everything is firing on all cylinders here with a lot of powerful performances, not just the obvious argument scene. You guys want to know why Adam Sandler wasn't nominated for Best Actor? It's because of all those shitty comedies he did since Punch Drunk Love. Or at least that's what one voter said. How stupid is that reason? He gave a career best with this performance. Every action he did felt like it had a lot of risk involved. It honestly made me feel a little bit paranoid while watching it. The sound design is just too good. Although the cinematography isn't for me, the film overall is still well executed. I just wish the Academy would recognize the Safdie brothers more. Taika Waititi has become a household name for me in recent years. I have been enjoying his films like Hunt for the Wilder People and What We Do in the Shadows, and after doing Thor Ragnarok, it's nice to see him return to making a small-ish film, even if it is an odd and Andersonian film as Jojo Rabbit. And while at times I feel it leans too much into borrowing from the style of Wes Anderson, I feel it does enough to make itself unique. No other film in recent memory gives a big fuck you to Nazis like this film does, portraying the members as a bunch of goofy fake boys club members, almost akin to how goofy the Boy Scouts are. But I also feel like the marketing for the film downplays the film's strengths, but it is a good film despite some of the film's backlash. One of the most underrated films. I feel like a lot of people are passing, and it's hard not to. I feel like Rocketman does enough to distinguish itself from the musical biopic genre that it creates its own expression. What? An actual musical that happens to be a biopic? Granted, this is kinda like Honey Boy in the fact that the story is being told from the POV of an older version of the character we're following in a rehab, talking about how he got there in the first place, but that isn't enough of a reason for me to not put it on this list. And what solidifies my feelings towards the film is the film's honesty, energy, and this particular scene.
I've been Reggie Dwight for years.
Whenever I remember this film, I will always remember how emotionally resonant this scene will be with me, showing that the most important kind of love out there is our own love to ourselves. While I don't personally believe this is Bong Joon-ho's best film, Parasite is without a doubt deserving of the Best Picture Oscar, and I am proud that Bong Joon-ho was allowed to win such an award after so many years of great filmmaking. One of the most talented filmmakers working today, Parasite is hilarious and thought-provoking about class issues and class struggles, and the ending made me not want to have birthdays anymore. I'll be honest, when I saw the name of this film, I was in disbelief as to how anyone could take the premise seriously. But fortunately enough, I found myself enjoying every bit of this surreal expression of phantom limb syndrome. The story here is top-notch, with special mention going out to Dan Levy for bringing out one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. Sometimes I listen to it when I'm writing and it helps me get in the mood. This was the last movie I saw before finalizing my list, and I am just floored as to how good this film was. There is a lot of personal baggage this film is taking with itself. Everything from Shia's script being the most personal thing I've seen all year, to the performances from Shia and his co-stars who play him himself. And Shia, I believe, gives his best performance, as not only is he responsible for remembering the memories he had of his father, but he also has to get in the headspace of his father. This really isn't an easy task, and I commend Shia for being brave enough to confront and become the person who changed his life for the good and the bad. But most importantly, this may not have been my favorite film of 2019, but the next film is, and that is The Lighthouse. No film this year could have taken my breath away more than Roger Eggers' sophomore film, The Lighthouse. Not only does this film offer career bests from both of the leads, but it has some very gorgeous cinematography. The black and white adding to the sense of awe and mystery around every corner of the island. The sound design at times disorients the viewer, and that ending is one of the most intense endings I have seen of the decade. And this film has so many interpretations that it's almost impossible to give a full-on definitive interpretation, because as it stands, it's a fun psychological thriller on its own, and it's very entertaining from the lead characters. But once you dig deeper, you can find a lot of similarities in themes and tones, from every corner of the world. It's a very enjoyable film from start to finish with great cinematography, as I said before, and I highly recommend watching it because this is definitely one for the record books of 2019. And that was my entire list of 2019, the best films I can come up with during this time of crisis. And every year when I do this, I always ask of myself and of others, how are we going to make the next year better? What do we have to look forward to in the next year? Because every year it seemed like there would be some big release that we were all excited for. When I did my list last time, it was Avengers Endgame. That was one of my favorites. You know, Avengers Endgame was going to be one of my most anticipated movies when I did my 2018 list. And now that we're in 2020, we're finally in 2020, and states are going through lockdowns and movies are being taken out of theaters, there really isn't a lot that we can really look forward to in terms of movies. And I can sense that 2020 is not necessarily going to be the biggest year ever for film. But that doesn't mean we stop watching movies. And so, with that, what is your favorite movies of 2019? If you have a favorite, put it down in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.